أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. I bear witness that without Allah there is no God. I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the last, the final messenger of Allah, after whom no prophet old or new will come. And I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. With the widespread availability and easily available community media that we have and electronic media that is available in almost every country of the world, it has become very easy for individuals to put forth their concepts and their ideas and their interpretations of different issues to the world at large. And many Muslims have utilized this opportunity to give interpretations so far as the religion of Islam is concerned. But there are two approaches. One is those who interpret Islam based upon the teachings and the traditions and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, and those who try to interpret the religion of Islam from the Quranic verses. Now, it's a good thing that people can think for themselves and no longer have to wait for Maulvis and Maulanas and Ulamas and Muftis and so on to interpret Islam for them. They see a challenge, they see an issue, and they want to comment on it. They do some research, whether it is on the internet or whether it is through books and literature or read the Quran themselves or hadith or whatever it may be, and they put on that media, whether it is academia, whether it is Reddit, whether it is Quora, whether it is Facebook or YouTube or whatever it may be. They give their ideas and their interpretations. It may be right, it may be wrong, but that's the way in which they look at it. Often they use it to criticize other people as well, to criticize the Sunnis, criticize the Shias, Shias criticize the Sunnis. People criticize the Ahmadiyya movement, the Lahore section, the Qadian section, and some criticize the Christians, Christians criticize the Hindus and Jews, and all of this is to be found in the electronic media that is available there. I have no problem when people try to interpret Islam and they look at the verses of the Quran, whether they are right or wrong, because they are making an attempt to study the Quran, even though what they study is in fact just the English translation or whatever language they may be utilizing. They use those French, Chinese, or whatever it may be to interpret the Quran. But still they are making an effort to put their views from the Quran. The problem arises when people look at the Hadith and try to interpret it, because there are so many Hadiths, many of them are contradictory, and the Quran quite clearly says, don't listen to Hadith. Especially when you are in the presence of the Prophet. Even during the Prophet's time, it says if he invites you, go and have a meal and then leave. Don't sit down to listen to. The word hadith is used in the Quran, but translated as talk. Don't listen to talk, or in other words, old talk. Don't stay to listen to any kind of old talk, which is the interpretation of the word hadith that is given in the English translation. So a person would read the English translation and miss that point where the Quran says don't listen to talk without looking at the Arabic and seeing that the word for talk is in fact hadith. Now, one of the issues, and there are many issues that arise, is of course the common issues of jihad, and then there are other issues as well. The question arises first and foremost as to how do we know which interpretation is correct? Everybody feels I have the right to interpret, and they have that right to interpret the Quran. But what about the right of Allah? Doesn't Allah have the right to explain to the world what He means by certain verses and words that He has put in His book, the Quran, His final book, the perfect book? Now, how is Allah going to speak to us and tell us this interpretation? Prophethood has come to an end. And that is why arrangements have been made for mujaddids to come. Not one, but several. Every era a mujaddid comes. He, or perhaps she, is a spokesman for Allah. So if we have to read the interpretation of all these different people on different issues, the best interpretation would be the one given by the person who is appointed by Allah. Because he is getting direct guidance, interpretation, revelation from Allah as to how to interpret particular verses of the Quran. And that applies, for example, in the case of the death of Jesus Christ, where everybody believes, Muslims believe, that in spite of the fact that the Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet, Jesus Christ is going to come back. How contradictory. And they don't see that contradiction. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad came as a mujaddid to say that I had thought so too, you know. But Allah has informed me that that is wrong. That is not what He meant in the Quran. That Jesus Christ is dead and will not come back. Muhammad is the last prophet. You want me to prove it? And he gave evidence of the Quran. And he gave evidence of the sayings of the Prophet, from the sayings of the Prophet. And he gave evidence from the companions of the Prophet and what they thought and what they had thought. And he gave evidence from Arabic grammar and so many other, from historical and archaeological evidence that Jesus Christ is dead. And He's not going to come back in this world. And the belief that He is one of the Trinity, all of those concepts have fallen to the ground. But one of the issues that some Muslims capitalize on is the issue of the interpretation of the word jinn. And there are so many different interpretations as to who or what jinn is. So much so that it has now become a profession to get rid of jinn. There's a practice that is called ruqyah, which is exorcism, and people claim that they can remove jinn. Sometimes they do it even through the telephone or even through the internet. You have a jinn, you can call up a person, and on Zoom they can get that jinn removed. There are many stories I can give you of my own experience of people who claim to have had experience with jinn and interpreted jinn, but time would not permit me to do so, except to say that I have known several cases in which people have been allegedly influenced by jinn. And I don't believe in what people say about jinn, that there are some creatures that live, mysterious creatures that live and come and enter people and so on. I don't believe that. And in these several people that I have come across, I have cured all of them and removed from them the so-called jinn that they say they had possessed. And they have begun to live normal lives. What therefore is the concept of jinn? The first mistake that people make is to point out that jinn and men, human beings, are different species. So that human beings are there, and then jinn are some other kinds of creatures that they either don't know, or if they know, they invent certain things, that they are snakes, or they are certain tribes and hidden creatures. They have kings among them, they have prophets among them, and so on. And from time immemorial, we have not seen these except people have given stories that have any factual basis. And the concept of jinn is a debate. The issue is not whether you can debate what is jinn and what is not jinn. The issue is that the Quran mentions the word jinn, and we have to understand what and why, what is jinn and why it is used in the Quran, and how it is used and for what purpose. Now, the word jinn basically comes from the Arabic word jannah, that means to be hidden, to be unseen. But it has other meanings as well. And there are several variations of this word that can mean something positive as well as negative. From this word jinn, we get the word Jannah. Jannah means paradise. There's nothing mysterious about it, nothing evil and sinister about it. Why is Jannah called paradise, a garden, when in fact jinn means something hidden? It is because, and it is well known in Arabic, that when the ground is so filled with vegetation and fruits and flowers that the ground is covered over, a profuse garden, that is what is called Jannah. The extensiveness and the abundance of fruits and flowers and whatever grass or so that covers the ground is why it is called Jannah. So the idea of hidden is still there because the ground is hidden. It is covered over by all of this vegetation. In the case of the Prophet Muhammad, the Quran says that at one time a party of jinn came to visit him outside the city of Makkah. And we know that these were people who came from Medina. And the Prophet was planning support to go to Medina to emigrate, not to flee, but to emigrate. He had sent some of his people to Abyssinia on 2 occasions, and he had sent some to Medina, and he himself was looking as a last resort to leave Makkah and go to Medina to continue his mission because of the persecution and the problems that they had. And so people came from Medina, hidden in the night, spoke to him, they made their plans and arrangements, and then they went back. And so the Quran deals with that issue of a party of jinn in a chapter dealing with the subject of jinn. So it is not something mysterious, they are human beings. And also, the Quran speaks of jinn among the people of Solomon. And among, in other senses, the Quran uses the word jinn too. It doesn't always mean only people. It means even something inside of you. For example, the Quran, the Arabic, in Arabic we speak of al-jannah, which means the embryo, a child which is in the womb of the mother because it cannot be seen. And so many other ways in which this word jinn is used. But I've selected just one chapter of the Quran, one instance in the Quran where this word is used to explain how it is to be interpreted and applied for our benefit. So jinn is not something that we have to be afraid of, but it's something that we have to be aware of, because they are not only jinn in the sense of human beings, wicked human beings. You have jinn in the sense of viruses and bacteria, and we have to take precaution and risk manage those issues because they are unseen. When the COVID vaccine came, people didn't recognize it in the beginning. When it came out, it took months before the World Health Organization was able to, point out that this is an epidemic, a pandemic. So that all around we are faced with jinn in many senses and in many interpretations. The Quran deals with perhaps not all of them, but certainly most of them, but by extension it will apply to all of them because they are in different circumstances. So in the last chapter of the Quran, Surah An-Nas, it says, "See, I take precaution in the nurture of humanity." One of the things we'll note in the Quran is that we speak about jinn and men, and this is where we have a problem when we use just the interpretation of the English. Because one could say, well, the Quran speaks of jinn and men, or men and jinn. How is that two different creations when the Quran speaks of men and women? They believe in men and they believe in women, the hypocritical men and the hypocritical women. Because you have men and women. Does it mean that women are of a different species? They are not human beings? Of course, in the case of Arabic, you will find that the words are different. The Quran speaks about ins and jinn. It doesn't speak, but it speaks about mu'minun and mu'minat. In English, we translate believe in men and women. So ins and jinn, men and jinn. But then again in the Quran, there are different words used for men. There is nas, there is ins, there is insan, there is rijal. There are different words which are used. So you can't take the English and say, well, look, the English here means this, and therefore you apply it in all cases. In fact, from my one of the observations I have is that this last chapter of the Quran is the only instance in which jinn is mentioned and the word nas is used. Otherwise, the word ins is used, and nas is used in a different context in different parts of the Quran. So one has to look at the use of the word in the context of how it is placed in the Quran and why it is placed there. So the Quran says, I take protection in the nurture of humanity, the controller of humanity, the divine nature in humanity, from the evil of those who instigate confidence, from the evil of the jealous one when he or she envies. Now there are certain words that in Arabic we need to understand here, and these are well-known, as a well-known chapter of the Quran. The word nas means humanity, it means society, it means persons inclining to one another, who are in a relationship, whether family relationship, genetic relationship, or social relationship. The Quran uses the word Malik. Malik in Nas means the one who rules over or controls people. It speaks of Ilah in Nas, that is which is worship or the divine nature in the human being. It speaks of waswas and the min sharril waswas, from the wrong things that the waswas, allazi waswisu fi sudurin nas. And waswas means the bad thoughts or soft sounds or steps that are taken. But it really means any kind of instigation, any kind of suggestion or innuendos. And what waswasa means really to go forward and then pull back. That's the literal meaning. It means bad ideas, but the word khannas means to go forward and come back. In other words, what the Quran is saying here is that sometimes there are ideas which are put to you, but then when you go back and confront the individual, say, I never said that. They backtrack, they recant, they say, or sometimes they say they apologize. They have a big issue in one of the northern countries right now where, with regards to use of land, a particular politician said that, I would not interfere with that land, and then suddenly, after a while, billions of dollars were given to contractors to build houses on that land, and then the individual backtracked and said, well, I have to, there were certain reasons why I had to go back on my promise of not interfering with the environment. So that is a practical issue, that is a day-to-day issue that is there. People say things and then they reject and they deny it. And then the Quran says, Allazi waswisu fi sudurin nas min al jinnati wan nas. And here the word jinn is used. Now when the word jinn is used here in this particular verse with regards to nas, it really means, the word jinn also means from the senses, or opposite to human activity. It means negative ideas which are put into one individual. And the Quran is indicating to us that anything that is hidden from our senses can be considered jinn. Even the angels are jinn because they are not seen. They are forces of nature, except that they are positive forces of nature. The Prophet Muhammad is reported to have said, all of us have a jinn. And someone said, you too, Messenger of Allah? He said, yes, I also have a jinn, but I'm made a Muslim. In other words, it is not a matter of some kind of entity or being, but it is the negative things in us that influence us to move in a particular direction when we control that. When we control them and make them submissive to us, which is what Muslim means, to make them submissive to us or submissive to the laws of God. So the Quran is indicating to us that from a psychological point of view, there are always issues and incidents in which there are negative things trying to take us away from the development of our personality, which is the purpose of religion. And so the Quran is reminding us that we have to seek refuge in certain things. What are there are three things that we tend to seek refuge in. A person seeks refuge in, first of all, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, the one who nurtures you. When an individual is in trouble, they turn to their parents. That's the one who nurtures them. Or teachers, they nurture them so far as education is concerned, or even others as well. Then a person turns towards Malikin Nas, those who control the issue. You have a problem, parents cannot help you, you go to the courts, you go to the police, you go to somebody in authorities. A medical problem, you go to the doctors. Legal problem, you go to the lawyers. The financial problem, you go to the bankers. They have the control. And then when all of these fail, an individual goes to something that they believe in. Something that they turn to some obeah man, they turn to some kind of faith healer, they turn to another religion, or somebody will, who they believe will give them the kind of assistance. So people seek refuge in all of these when they are faced with issues and problems. But the Quran is pointing out to us and indicating to us that there are two kinds of thoughts that we have within our minds. There are two kinds of approaches we have to deal with issues. One is jinn and one is nas. And what does that mean? It means that there are thoughts, negative ideas that come in our minds which are just, as we say, we have some kind of bad thoughts or bad feeling about an issue. And it comes in our thoughts and in our minds. But then there are some evil thoughts that are put to us or come to us, and we begin to rationalize it. We begin to justify it. The other one is that it just comes to our mind that I feel this is going to happen. I feel this is not going to happen. Or I feel that this is bad is going to happen. But then there are some thoughts that come that where we kind of try to rationalize it. The reason why this has happened is because I think so and so and so and so, and we give excuses as it were. So the Quran is indicating to us that we have to seek the protection of Allah from our own desires and our thoughts, whether they are instigated and incited by our negative approach to life, or what we call pessimistic approach to life, or whether they become from what is called premeditation. We know that in committing a crime, there are two kinds of crimes. One that is committed in the heat of one's passion. A person in defense of himself, self-defense, or they get angry or vexed, and they start to rant and rave. They don't sometimes even know what they are doing. But then there are other kinds of crime which is called premeditated. One thinks and sit down and feel, I will do for that individual. And begin to plan where we will meet them, when you will meet them, how you're going to injure them or kill them, as the case may be. You're going to use a gun, you're going to use poison, whatever. So that the Quran is indicating these two kinds of nature that are within us. And in doing all of this in this particular chapter, what we are told generally as jinn, unseen things, not human beings, but thoughts and ideas, influences that affect the development of our personality. And the Quran is indicating to us that as human beings, we are deceived through three methods. Someone comes and becomes our benefactor. They give us food, they give us favors, or, election time, politicians will come and give you jerseys, or they will give you something. They offer you something. We find many people convert to other religions because they see some kind of benefit. I can do this for you, I can help you and you get a job, I can help you in some way or the other. So we influence away from our own development, self-development, by people taking over our desires and our thoughts and manipulating them so that they can offer us what we think might be better or what it is we desire, and we don't even have to work for, they will get it done. I have contacts here and there, they will be able to do it. Or sometimes we are influenced by our own rationalizing thinking, or others convincing us that our bad behavior is justified. Say, yes, go and do it, man. Nobody will know that. You go and you can do this. You can steal some fruits or so. Nobody will really know. And this is what is meant by khannas. Wrongdoers swear that they are innocent. They say, I just mentioned this to you. I didn't tell you to go and do it. And they backtrack, as it were. So people put ideas in our minds and giving us reasons why doing the wrong thing is right. And this is not only just neighborly talk. You see it widely in the media, where people are encouraging people to do certain things or not to do certain things because of that influence. Or that there is someone in power and authority who influences us to do certain things. You have to do it this way. This is the law. This is the rule. Or someone indeed loves you and possesses your thoughts and your feelings. In other words, what you call peer pressure. So people say they're your friend, they like you, but they will encourage you to do that it is wrong, what we call peer pressure. And young people are faced with these challenges. They are faced with these issues in life where you will find that someone gives them something, and we see that among children, that they are given sweets or so that may have drugs in them. They are enticed to do certain things. And that is so common where people are suffering in the world, and it leads to even sometimes human trafficking. And then you find that someone in authority comes and they take charge of you, and that is so common. Again, I wouldn't even go into giving references. Or that people come forward and say they're your friend, they love you, they are kind to you, and then they encourage you to do that which is wrong. So the concept of jinn that is in the Quran is used in several senses, in several interpretations. But we have to understand it in the context of the verses that are there as to how it affects our human personality and human personality development. And not to just have this carte blanche idea that jinn are some extra creatures that come and make you crazy or make you do certain things, and you go to someone and they perform some certain prayers, give you some amulet that you can put on, and that will cure you from the jinn. That is not what is taught in the Quran, and certainly was not taught by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it is important for us to understand this. But of course, in one sermon, one cannot explain all the interpretations of jinn, but this is something maybe for a book, or it is for a longer audience, or a teaching class, as the case may be. So it is necessary for us to realize and understand that jinn is very important in our lives, but how we understand it depends upon how we can develop ourselves morally and spiritually. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-Azim. Wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun kareem. Malikun barur raufur rahim. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi. Wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa nashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر. I'd just like to indicate to you that I know for this year we have had